I thought I was happily married, until one soft kiss in a motel parking lot unraveled everything I believed about my wife and myself. The front door creaked open, letting in an unwelcome shaft of sunlight that sliced through the shadows in the living room. It was a quiet Friday afternoon and I was just sitting there lost in thought. A tall man stepped inside and glanced around like he wasn't sure if he was in the right place. I raised a hand and motioned him over. He gave me that easy smile I remembered and walked toward the table. His full name was Gregory James Callahan, but folks around our circles just called him Texas. He wore his usual faded jeans and that old cowboy hat he never seemed to part with. Tex drove long-haul trucks for the company I managed, which delivered baked goods to several neighboring states. Besides running our main facility, I also oversaw 2 additional plants, one in Pennsylvania, the other in Ohio. But today I'd taken the afternoon off, specifically to talk to Texas. Something had been weighing on me, and I needed his perspective. Tex had wrapped up his route earlier than usual. He was one of those guys who liked to start his runs before sunrise and be back by midday. These days he mostly kept to himself, jogging through the neighborhood when he wasn't on the road. There was a time when he and his wife Linda were close with my wife Rachel and me, until their marriage fell apart. Since the divorce, Tex and I hadn't caught up. It had been about 6 months since we last spoke. I finally decided to give him a call before meeting face to face. "Hey Texas, how you doing?" I asked as he sat down. He grinned, shaking his head. "Well, look who decided to check in. Gotta say I'm surprised you called. Thought I'd been bumped off the friends list after the whole mess with Linda." I gave him a small nod. "It's true, we haven't really talked since you and Linda split. Rachel wasn't exactly thrilled with you. She kept saying you were the root of the drama in our marriage, even after I reminded her that it was Linda who cheated. Rachel just smirked and called it karma for your own mistakes." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, that sounds like her. I didn't agree with her, but I wasn't looking to stir the pot. She's always looking for a reason to be mad at me anyway," I added, trying to keep things light. We met at a little bar downtown, nothing fancy, just a quiet spot where we could talk without distractions. After a few minutes of small talk, we flagged down the waitress and ordered drinks. Tex glanced at her briefly but didn't make his usual flirty comment. He must have picked up on the tension and knew this wasn't a social call. Rachel didn't want us to cut ties with Linda, so I never pushed back. But truth be told, Tex, I was never a fan of her after the divorce, I admitted. He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "That right. But that's not what this is about," I continued. "I called you here because I've got a few questions. And you're the only one who might have the answers." Tex gave me a curious look, then smiled, wider this time, like he already knew where this was heading. "Let me guess," he said. "Trouble in paradise? Sounds like you're dealing with some relationship issues yourself." I raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that? Is there something I should know?" He leaned in a little, lowering his voice. "I don't know everything, but I've got my hunches. After Linda and I split, she and Rachel started spending a whole lot of time together. And I'll be honest, none of that ever sat right with me. Something about it just felt off." I stared at him, the pit in my stomach getting heavier. "So tell me," he said, his tone shifting, "what signs have you seen? What made you start wondering?" I looked over at Tex and asked him to walk me through what he remembered. He paused, like he was choosing his words, and I flagged down the waitress for another round. When the beers arrived, he took his glass and downed a good third of it without missing a beat. His face was still, but I could tell he was carrying more than just thoughts. "It started subtle," he said, setting the glass back on the table. "Linda used to be the kind of woman who never stopped talking. I mean, she'd fill every quiet space with something. Stories, questions, gossip, whatever came to her mind. It used to drive me a little crazy, but at least I knew where her head was at." He stared past me for a moment, then continued. "Then, out of nowhere, she got quiet. Not just tired after work, quiet but weirdly distant. She was still saying things, sure, but it was all fluff. Pointless stuff. Rambling about people I didn't know or topics she never cared about before. It was like she was talking just to fill the silence, or maybe to avoid having any real conversation." I nodded, listening closely. "Did you think she was under pressure, like from work or something?" Tex shrugged. "At first, yeah. I figured she was stressed, maybe going through a phase. But then it started to shift. She became hostile, over the tiniest things. She'd pick a fight over whether I left a dish in the sink or how I folded a towel. It didn't matter what I did, she was always ready to lash out, like she was just waiting for an excuse. I couldn't open my mouth without it starting something." He took another sip, slower this time. "That's when I started feeling like something was seriously off. I mean, we weren't perfect, but it had never been like that before. It had only been a few months since their divorce had been finalized, and while Tex never said it outright, I could still see how torn up he was about it. No matter how much she hurt him, there was a part of him that still cared, still missed who she used to be. But he couldn't forgive her, not really. And what made it worse was that she didn't seem to feel a shred of remorse. I leaned back a bit and told him, that's when I started noticing things too, little shifts. I started calling the house during the day, something I'd never done before. At first, I didn't even say anything when she picked up. I'd just hang up after a few seconds. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe just trying to catch her off guard. Tex gave me a curious look but didn't interrupt. After about 3 weeks of doing that, I went on. I picked up on a pattern. She was always home. Every day. Except Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, she'd be gone by early morning and wouldn't show up again until well into the afternoon, 3, sometimes 4 o'clock. I took a swig of my beer and motioned for another bottle, feeling that familiar churn in my gut as the memories came flooding back. When I asked what she was doing out all day, she gave me these vague answers. Errands, dry cleaning, picking up things for the house. Nothing added up though. It was just, off. Tex didn't say anything. He was watching me now like he knew exactly where I was going with all this. And the last red flag? I said, voice lower now. Our intimacy. It started fading until it just disappeared. And when I tried to bring it up, she acted like I was bothering her. Like I was out of line for wanting to feel connected again. And when it did happen, it was hollow. She wasn't there. Her body was, but she wasn't. Tex slowly shook his head. That part hits home. She used to love being close, I added. We'd laugh, play around, just be together. Then it stopped. Cold. I kept hoping it was just a phase, but in my gut, I knew better. I glanced at Texas. He looked troubled. Something was clearly eating at him. But I didn't ask, not yet. I was too wrapped up in my own life to notice how much Tex was hurting. Looking back now, I wish I'd been there for him more. The divorce hit him hard and I kept my distance, thinking it wasn't my place. But I see it differently these days. I turned toward him and said quietly, I owe you an apology. I should have been around when things were falling apart. I don't know if it means much now, but I really am sorry. He gave a slight shrug, his face unreadable. It's fine, he said flatly. What's done is done. But I could hear something behind those words. The kind of pain that doesn't go away just because you don't talk about it. So how did it all finally come out? I asked him, already knowing it must have been rough. Tex leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I took a day off work, said I had a doctor's appointment or something. Borrowed a buddy's car so Linda wouldn't recognize it. Then I waited down the street, parked near the house, and watched until she left. She had one of those Wednesday afternoon appointments, again. He paused, letting out a slow breath. I followed her, he said. She drove straight to some rundown motel off Frederick Street. I remember the name, the color of the curtains, even the cheap neon sign flickering in the window. That image is burned into me. He gave a short, bitter laugh. And you know the worst part? I think I was actually hoping it wouldn't be what I thought. But seeing her pull into that parking lot, going inside like it was routine. I knew. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't imagine carrying that kind of betrayal without answers. Did she ever give you an explanation? I finally asked. Did you ever ask why she did it? Why she hurt you like that? Tex shook his head. I asked once. Just once. She didn't say a word. Not even a fake excuse. Just walked away. That silence, man, that was almost worse than the cheating. I think you need closure, I told him. Even if it doesn't change anything, you deserve to understand. Me though, once I saw the truth, forgiveness wasn't even on the table. I couldn't bring myself to look at Rachel the same way again. No apology was gonna erase that. Tex chuckled, his voice low and rough. Well, that's why you came to the right guy. Let old Tex help you figure this out. We'll come up with a plan, something foolproof. Catch her red-handed. We started throwing ideas back and forth, half joking, half serious. But mostly we just drank. The more we drank, the lighter I started to feel. Just talking to someone who got it made all the difference. The tension in my chest started to ease, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. By the time I got home, it was late, real late. I fumbled with the garage door, still buzzed, my thoughts heavy with everything I'd spilled to Texas. The weight of it all pressed down on me like a soaked coat. Rachel met me in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Rough night? She asked. Her tone was cool, careful. I wasn't in the mood. Not in that state. I gave her a nod but didn't say much, just mumbled something about needing a shower. The hot water hit my back and washed away some of the haze. Slowly I felt myself returning to normal, more grounded, more me. It's strange how something as simple as a shower can give you a moment of clarity. By the time I stepped out and toweled off, I could walk straight again. I felt composed. Not exactly okay, but better. And then I heard her voice, low and pointed, just outside the bathroom door. "So, who were you with last night?" "I was with Tex Callahan," I said plainly, watching her eyes for any flicker of reaction. "You remember Tex, right? The guy whose girlfriend ran off with the same man she claimed was just a friend?" Rachel crossed her arms, the suspicion thick in her expression. "You mean the one who cheated first? Martha didn't do anything wrong. Tex was the one being unfaithful. She got tired of it and finally walked away. She and Jack were just friends. This whole mess? That was all Texas." I couldn't help but laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how wildly naive she sounded. I looked at her like I was staring at a stranger. "You seriously believe that?" I asked, almost amused. "She's been feeding you that garbage for months, hasn't she? You really think she's some innocent bystander? Come on, Rachel." The woman would rather file a fake Social Security claim than hand over a dime. She already burned through every penny Tex had, and when all that was left was the house, he gave it to her, mortgage and all. Rachel stared at me like I had just told her we were being evicted. Her face was pale, eyes wide with a stunned kind of silence. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but I didn't. Not yet. It was time to stop playing defense. I knew the truth, and if this was going to be a war, I had to make the first move. Martha's new man hadn't left his wife, and now she was selling her house just to pay for legal fees. And you know what? She didn't even seem to care. It was like she had convinced herself she was in the right, no matter how twisted things had become. I figured Rachel would do the same, try to cover her tracks, scrub the evidence clean. But that was her mistake. Because the moment she felt the need to defend herself, she gave me the upper hand. Her guilt would be her tell. She thought I was clueless. But I wasn't. I knew something was off. I could feel it in the way she moved, the way she avoided certain conversations, the way her stories always sounded just a little too polished. And that realization surprised me. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't pacing around the room or spiraling. I just felt still. Like I'd already accepted what was happening, and I was finally seeing things clearly. "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said, my voice calm. "I'm just curious. Got any plans today? Somewhere you need to be?" Rachel shifted in place, suddenly jittery like a kid caught sneaking out after curfew. She turned to the sink, pretending to busy herself, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes. "No, I'm staying home today. Got a few things to handle here. Laundry. Some work stuff," she said without looking at me. Then after a long pause she added, "And later tonight, I'm watching a new movie with Martha." There it was. The name. The one she had been careful not to mention for weeks. She tried to act casual, but I knew better. If she was really sneaking around, tonight would be her perfect cover. Just as I was piecing it all together, the screen door creaked open behind us. I turned to see our neighbor Carl, stepping onto his porch and casually strolling toward our house. And for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real story, Rachel's story, was just beginning to unfold. I grabbed Tex by the arm and we both ducked down just as Rachel's car cruised by. She didn't see us, her eyes were fixed on the road ahead. As she reached the intersection with Madison Avenue, she made a sharp turn in our direction. We crouched lower behind the bushes near the old pharmacy, holding our breath while she passed within a few feet. Tex straightened up slowly, keeping his gaze on her car as it stopped briefly at the corner of Madison and Main. We waited. Then she made a left toward downtown. Tex didn't need me to say anything. He got behind the wheel of his truck and we followed from a few blocks back, staying far enough behind to avoid suspicion. After about 10 minutes, Rachel pulled into a parking lot next to a small roadside diner. A second car rolled in behind her. The driver, a man, parked beside her. He hesitated. She hesitated. Then he turned off the ignition. Tex looked at me waiting for a cue. But I just shook my head. "Let's go," I said quietly. "I've seen enough." We didn't stick around to watch what happened next. I didn't want to see them go inside. I didn't want to count the minutes or wonder if they were sitting in a booth pretending nothing was wrong. I didn't want to picture the way she might laugh at his jokes the way she used to laugh at mine. No, I was done spying. Done eavesdropping on my own marriage like some stranger trying to crack a case. That's not who I am. She crossed a line and that's what matters. They were gone for over an hour and a half. I didn't need to guess what happened in that time. Maybe it was in his car. Maybe it was at a motel. Or maybe it was just them pretending this was something innocent. But deep down I knew. The question now wasn't what she had done, but how she'd try to spin it. Would she outright deny everything? Pretend it was all in my head? Or maybe she'd try to water it down, act like it was just a brief mistake, a moment of weakness. That's what they always say, right? I didn't have long to wonder. Her return was announced by the familiar rumble of her engine pulling into the driveway. I heard the garage door rattle open and close. I sat on the edge of the couch, waiting. When she walked in, I couldn't help but notice the way she looked, dressed to impress as if the right outfit might distract from what she'd just done. I used to think she wore those flashy clothes for me. Now, I wondered if they were just a mask, some way to cover the emptiness between us. Maybe she felt like I wasn't enough anymore. Maybe, deep down, she needed someone else to validate her. I couldn't read her mind, but I could see through the performance. And I didn't wait long. "I think you're lying to me," I said. My voice was calm even. "And I think you're cheating on your husband. That's my belief. Now, prove me wrong." Her eyes widened. For a moment she looked like she might laugh it off. But then her face fell and the tears started. "You're wrong," she said through sobs. "None of that is true. It's not what you think. I didn't cheat on you. I swear on everything I didn't." I stood there, arms crossed, watching her break down in front of me. I didn't feel the way I thought I would. There was no triumph, no anger, just a deep, cold certainty that I'd reached the end of something. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I don't believe you anymore. You sound just like Martha did when Tex caught her. The same excuses. The same act." She was crying hard now, rocking slightly, reaching for words but unable to find them. She wasn't ready for this confrontation. She didn't have her lies rehearsed. "I'm going to pack my things," I told her quietly. "I'll be out of here by the weekend. I'll call Harold Foley in the morning to start the divorce proceedings. He's my attorney, so you'll need to find your own." That caught her off guard. She jumped up, hands waving, disbelief etched across her face. "No," she gasped. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Dead serious." She stood frozen, speechless. I turned and looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in nearly a decade of marriage, she looked afraid. Not angry. Not defensive. Just afraid. And the worst part? I couldn't blame her. Because I wasn't the man she could manipulate anymore. I was done. "I can't listen to this," I said, my voice low, steady. "Not tonight." And with that, I walked past her and out of the room, leaving the lies behind. I thought I could handle it, I told myself as I stood there, feeling the weight of it all, but this is too much. My heart was pounding as I backed away from Rachel. I couldn't even look at her anymore. "Just, please, don't say anything. Step back. Be quiet," I said, my voice barely steady. Without waiting for her response, I turned and bolted down the hallway to our bedroom. I yanked my overnight bag from the closet, threw open the drawers and stuffed whatever I could grab into it. Shirts, socks, whatever was on top. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed to go. Fast. I zipped the bag shut, still shaking, my chest tight, not with sadness but with fury. Not rage either, just that sharp, cold sting that hits you when someone you trusted turns out to be a stranger. I knew this moment would come eventually, but even knowing didn't make it easier. Beer and talking with Tex the night before had kept me somewhat grounded, but waking up the next morning, Sunday, felt like crawling out of a 10-round fight I never had a chance of winning. Tex had mentioned he had errands to run and told me to make myself at home for a while. I thanked him quietly as he left. I showered, changed into jeans and a clean t-shirt and wandered into the kitchen. Found some eggs in the fridge and threw together a quick egg sandwich. Something simple, something to make me feel human again. I'd slept on the couch in his office-turned-guest room the night before. It wasn't a real bedroom, just a desk, a computer, and a surprisingly comfortable office chair. But it felt safe. It felt neutral. Like a place where none of the lies had seeped in yet. Later that morning, I picked up the landline on his desk. The kind with the spiral cord that you never see anymore. I dialed. "Hello." "Hi, Rachel," I said. My voice came out softer than I expected. "It's me. Peter," she gasped. "Thank God. I had no idea where you went. I was calling Martha, calling Tex. No one would answer me. I thought. I didn't know what to think. I didn't answer right away. I'm sorry about last night," I said. "But I had to go before I did or said something I couldn't take back." "Please," she said, her voice breaking a little. "Please come home. Let's talk. If you still don't believe me after that, I'll accept it, but at least let me explain." I hesitated. "Fine. I'll be back in an hour," I said. "You'll get your chance." I hung up. I didn't fully understand why I agreed to return. Maybe it was a part of me still holding out hope that there had been some mistake. Maybe I wanted answers, or maybe I just needed closure. But I also knew I was walking back into a room where more hurt was waiting. And yet, I couldn't resist. Rachel had already caused enough pain without even realizing it. Why add more to the pile? But maybe, just maybe, there was still a part of me that needed to see it through, to hear the whole truth even if it shattered me all over again. When I arrived, I paused in the hallway, taking in the space with new eyes. The elegant dining table with its place settings laid out like we were still playing house. A large bouquet of fresh flowers stood at the center as if to say, everything's fine here. The living room was spotless, furniture arranged just the way she liked it. Matching cushions. Perfectly fluffed. As if appearances could somehow hold together what had already fallen apart. And then there she was. Standing in the archway, wearing a yellow sundress I hadn't seen in a long time. Her hair done, her makeup subtle. Trying to look soft, calm, like none of this had happened. But behind her eyes, secrets. Secrets I could no longer ignore. And I wasn't going to pretend everything was okay just because the curtains were drawn and the house smelled like citrus candles. Rachel, I said. We need to talk. I met up with Martha a few days after, still turning everything over in my mind. I needed to know if what Rachel had been saying held any water. At one point I asked her straight out, so what? This went on for 7, maybe 8 months? Is that what you're telling me? That Tex was cheating on you that whole time? She nodded, her expression unreadable. I stared at her, not convinced. And how exactly did you figure all that out? Did you have a private investigator following him around? Or is this just guesswork? She didn't answer right away. You never showed me any proof, I continued. So why now? What's changed? Why am I supposed to believe it just because you're saying it louder? The whole thing felt like fiction, one dramatic tale after another. If this is the version of the story you're sticking to, I told her, standing up, then I'm done. I'll leave right now. Wait, Peter. Please, she said, her voice breaking a little. It's not like you think. I swear. I folded my arms, waiting. I convinced myself you were the one having the affair, she said softly. It made sense. The late nights, the sudden need to run errands after dinner. I connected all the dots, but I drew the wrong picture. She stepped toward me, but I took a step back. I know I made a promise to let you explain everything, I said, trying to hold it together. But this is too much. You're twisting everything, trying to turn it back on me. I lost it. Anger surged up and took over. I slammed my hand down on the back of a kitchen chair and flung it aside. It hit the tile floor with a loud crack and I stormed out of the room. I sat alone in the den for a long time, staring at the wall, trying not to explode again. I didn't want to hear anything else from her, not now. Not until I could think clearly. I'll call you later, I said to myself. When I'm calm enough to talk. That was all I remembered when I woke up after lunch the next day. Tex and I had spent most of Saturday drinking, hashing things out, coming up with half-baked plans to get closure, or justice depending on how you looked at it. Surprisingly, I didn't wake up with a headache. I actually felt clear. As if something heavy had finally lifted, even just a little. Feeling better than I expected, I picked up the phone and dialed Rachel. Hello, she answered, cautious. Yeah, it's me. Peter? Her voice changed immediately. How are you? I almost laughed. What do you mean, how am I? You think I'm doing great after everything? You left before I had a chance to explain, she said, rushing her words. You swore you'd hear me out. I didn't respond. I'll tell you everything, she continued. About Philip. You need to know who he really is. Please just come home. We need to talk while I still have your attention. I sighed. All right. I'm coming. Just don't waste my time. Before leaving, I scribbled a note for Tex and left it on the coffee table beside his half-finished beer. He was out cold on the couch, snoring lightly, probably wouldn't wake up until tomorrow. Still, I figured I owed him a heads-up. When I got home, I pulled into the garage and entered the house quietly. Rachel was already there, sitting at the kitchen table like she'd been rehearsing her lines for hours. Her tea sat untouched in front of her, growing cold. She looked up the moment I stepped in. I said nothing. Just stood there and took a deep breath, trying to keep my pulse under control. She saw the anger in my eyes before I said a word and rushed to speak first. Peter, I know how this looks, she started, but you have to believe me. I held up a hand, not to stop her, but to make her slow down. I wasn't here to listen to more damage control, I was here for the truth. And it was time she told it. I want to be absolutely clear, Rachel said, her voice trembling slightly. There was nothing inappropriate about those dinners. We were just two friends catching up, talking, sharing a meal, maybe dancing a little now and then. That's all. She looked straight at me like she wanted to believe it herself. He was always respectful. A gentleman. Until that night. I stayed silent, letting her talk. He had just gotten back from a business trip. He'd been gone about a week. We were at the same restaurant we always went to. And out of nowhere he pulled me aside over to this quiet corner near the back, and he kissed me. She paused, eyes darting toward the floor. It was the first time, she said. Our first kiss. It wasn't forceful or aggressive, it was soft. Almost sweet. And I didn't pull away. I didn't start it either, but I didn't stop it. Her voice cracked slightly as she added, I didn't say anything. So I guess he assumed I was okay with it. I didn't move. I didn't speak. But after that, she took a sharp breath. I felt disgusting. I felt like I had crossed a line I never meant to cross. It was strange watching her talk through it. Like she wasn't even talking to me anymore. More like she was trying to explain it to herself. To justify it. Her voice was uneven, her breathing shallow. The way she recounted it so carefully, so emotionally, it felt like I was watching someone unravel in real time. And maybe that was the most revealing part. That night I saw something shift in her. I couldn't quite put it into words, but it was there. Maybe she hadn't changed suddenly. Maybe this was who Rachel had always been beneath the surface. A woman quietly waiting for the right excuse or the right moment to feel free. She looked up at me, eyes full of some complicated mix of regret and desperation. I'm on the edge, Peter, she said. Emotionally, I'm barely holding it together. And the only reason I'm telling you all of this is because I thought maybe, just maybe, it would give you some kind of peace. But I'm not talking to a priest. And I know you can't give me absolution. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back what I was feeling. If that's all, I said, then I need to leave. Before I say something I can't take back. Or worse, do something I'll regret. She stood up, instinctively reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Quietly. She sat down again, realizing I wasn't coming any closer. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. She didn't even notice. And for some strange reason, that tiny, insignificant detail, the untouched mug, made me smile for a brief second. She saw the smile and misunderstood it. You don't believe me, she whispered, withdrawing her hand. But it's the truth. As crazy as it sounds, it's the truth. I looked at her, not with anger, but with the clarity that only comes after you've accepted something you never wanted to believe. You know, I said slowly, now that I hear all this I realize, you weren't the only one acting different. I was too. That's why you thought something was going on with me. You knew me well enough to sense it. And I guess I was too lost in my own mess to recognize it happening in myself. I turned away, the full weight of the past few days pressing into my chest. And that's what self-absorption does, I muttered. It blinds you. Makes you miss the obvious. The memory of that night came rushing back. The night Tex found out about Martha. We were drinking and talking, trying to make sense of it all. But somewhere in the haze, a quiet truth started to form. I hadn't just stumbled into this. I'd been walking blindfolded toward it for months. It was only now, after watching Rachel squirm through her confession, that I finally understood why she had agreed to meet Philip again in the first place. I get it now, I said, not looking at her. I see the whole picture. And unfortunately, it made perfect sense. I had been completely in the dark. For months, maybe longer. But everything shifted after that Saturday morning conversation with Tex. Talking to him was like waking up from a deep sleep. He didn't sugarcoat anything, and something about his way of laying it all out, it cut through the fog I'd been living in. That was the moment it hit me, how I'd let myself be dragged into this mess by people I shouldn't have trusted. I realized I had been blindly taking Rachel's side, repeating the words Martha had planted in her head, words that came from Philip and from Jack and who knows who else. All these twisted stories. All these convenient companions, guiding her through her betrayal. And I had believed them. Until now. So I asked her point blank, why? Why did you agree to meet him in private? Why let him book a motel? Why pretend you were just seeing Martha when you knew exactly what was going on? Up until that morning you were fully prepared to go through with it. What changed? Rachel's face crumbled. She looked down at her hands. She manipulated me, she whispered. Martha made it sound like I was owed this. That if I cheated too I'd understand. I'd level the playing field. I nodded slowly, the truth settling hard in my chest. So what you're saying is, if I hadn't stepped in, if I hadn't caught on, you would have gone through with it. That's the truth, isn't it? She didn't answer. You say you didn't like the kiss, I went on. But you didn't stop it. You planned to sleep with him, Rachel. You just didn't get the chance because I got in the way. And now you're trying to rewrite the story like it was never going to happen. Tears welled in her eyes. It's not true, she said quietly. I didn't sleep with him. And I didn't even enjoy that kiss. I hated myself for it. I kept trying to believe that it meant something, but it didn't. Not to me. You only think it didn't, I said. But you needed a reason to betray me. So you created one in your mind. You justified it to yourself. That's why you kept seeing him. That's why you lied. Rachel was silent. That was the moment I felt the foundation of everything we built start to give way. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I was before. I was done hoping for reconciliation. I was done wondering why. I saw it clearly now, and there was nothing left to salvage. The next day I filed for divorce. Rachel didn't put up a fight. Not even a word of protest. And as for Philip? No, I didn't just let him walk away clean. A few days after I left the house, word got around that he was jumped outside a bar by two guys in ski masks. They roughed him up pretty bad. The police called it a botched robbery attempt. No one was ever arrested. No security cameras, no clear witnesses, just two guys disappearing into the night. The case went cold. And that was that. Rachel ended up selling the house shortly after the divorce was finalized. I don't know where she went. I didn't ask. I didn't care. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe again.